Hello, everybody. Welcome to my lanai here in Arizona. There's a good chance y'all are looking for some new content to watch, so thank you for joining. I've never hosted a show like this, but I did grow up on a lot of Arsenio Hall and Wayne's World, so hopefully this will go okay. I love working at AEW, and we have a tremendous group of people, both talent that you're familiar with and so many amazing people working behind the scenes. So hopefully this show gives you an opportunity to enjoy new content, but also to meet the just incredible group of people from AEW and become a little bit more familiar with them. My first guest is a member of SCU. He is one half of the first ever AEW World Tag Team Champions. Please welcome Scorpio Sky. Scorpio Sky, welcome. It's good to have you here on the first ever. Thank you for being a friend. How you doing?
That's cool, man. Thanks for having me. I'm glad I can do this and be on the.
Well, it's good to have you. I think the first time we ever met, correct me if I'm wrong, was Championship Wrestling from Arizona.
I feel like I probably met you at WWE at one point when I was a lowly extra, but I don't expect you to remember. I actually can't remember a specific time, but I feel like I had to have met you there. Or I don't know if you did any PWG at any point. I know sometimes they bring in guest announcers, so I feel like we met it somewhere down the line. But yeah, Championship Wrestling from Arizona is definitely one of them.
There's a chance we shook hands and said hello back in the WWE days, and then at Championship Wrestling from Arizona, I was producing and I was doing a bunch of different things at once. And I remember sitting down and watching the monitor. I'm like, who's that guy? And just watching your match, and I thought, wow, he's really good. And then when I saw that you were going to be a part of AEW, I was very happy for you.
Thank you.
You got it. First question I want to ask you, is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Is Die Hard a Christmas movie? I haven't seen Die Hard in a really long time, so I don't know. I'm guessing maybe there's something that happens in that movie around Christmas. I really don't remember it. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch it.
That's okay. Sorry. Next, you do a hell of a Ric Flair impression, and just to give you an opportunity to do that for the world here, if the Macho Man Randy Savage wanted to order a pepperoni pizza that he was going to be splitting with the Nature Boy, but Nature Boy wanted half peppers and onions, what would that conversation sound like?
All right. Yeah, I'm thinking. The stomach is rumbling. I think I want a little pizza. Aha! Hey, Nature Boy, would you like to order a pizza with me? Randy! You and I, brother, we're going all night. I've got a mimosa here, and we're gonna go. I wish you could order some pizza. Listen, I want the peppers, and I want the sausage and everything. You load it all up. Ooh, sausage. You know what, Rick? You know the Macho Man doesn't mess with sausage. I need pepperoni, and that's it. Randy, you order whatever you want, brother. Just make sure they bring a couple more bottles of champagne. Woo!
I love it. That's great. Scorpio, what have you been up to? Well, I've been home here for a month. I've been in for a full month, so I haven't seen you for at least a month. What have you been up to?
Yeah, I haven't been on the road since we were in Utah, in Salt Lake City, which was a great show. First time in Salt Lake City. I enjoyed it. So other than that, we are in California. We're on like a safer at home or whatever they call it, settle in place or order here, where we're basically supposed to stay home. So I've been home drinking mimosas, watching AEW Dynamite, and just actually kind of trying to look at this as a rest. You know, I've been on the road. I haven't really been home for more than just a couple of days and years. So I'm just trying to take it as like a vacation the best I can, which I'm going a little stir crazy. Some days I'm climbing up the walls. I learned how to play a video game. I've never really been a gamer, but I've been playing NBA 2K. I actually won the championship with my team this morning. So yay me, the Lakers now are champions. But other than that, yeah, I've just been working out at home and just trying to stay safe and hoping and praying for the end of this, and that things get better before they get worse.
Congratulations on your victory and your championship. That's exciting. Have you been watching any Netflix, any Hulu, HBO, anything streaming, any movies, TV shows you could recommend?
Well, of course, I watched Tiger King. Everyone has watched that, I think, by this point. Um, you know what's weird is because I'm not used to being idle, it's actually really hard for me to sit down and watch full shows. Or a lot of times I find myself putting a show on and or a movie and watching the first few minutes of it and then turning it off because I'm just not used to just sitting. I'm always go go go. Even when I am home, it's like I'm going to the gym or I'm going to do this or I'm going, whatever. So sometimes I am struggling a little bit with, um, you know, binge watching things. But things I've watched in the past that I would recommend besides Tiger King would be The Staircase was really, really good. Obviously, I feel like everyone's seen Making a Murderer. If you haven't, definitely check that out. For some reason, everyone's been watching Grey's Anatomy lately. I don't know why that's come back, but why not? That's a decent show. I haven't seen all of it, but there's so much out there. There's a lot of AEW Darks on YouTube that people can check out. I've got matches on there, and obviously Dynamite I watch every week from home, which is really cool. And I think the show's been a lot of fun.
I agree. You talk about the gym. Have you been coming up with weird gymming at home type exercises? Have you been creative?
I've been as creative as I can get. I've done curls and shrugs and things like that with gallons of water. I do a lot of body weight stuff, so it's squats and push-ups and crunches and whatever I can do with my body weight, and just making the best of it because I don't have any home equipment at all. I was very much a go to the gym person, which is now changing my perspective because I think now I need to actually invest in having some equipment at home because of situations like this that you don't see coming. And now I've got, again, I'm lifting bottles of champagne and gallons of water for workouts, but I'm doing the best I can. I want to stay in shape. Hopefully I'll just come back more ripped, but I'm also eating pretty bad. That's one thing I would address. Things are getting postponed. I want to make an official announcement that we're going to go ahead and we're going to postpone our summer bodies for 2020. We don't by like June or anything anymore. Let's go ahead and just push that back. Let's try to have our summer bodies ready by like November. How's that? November, our summer bodies.
Or that, I know my workouts have been very strange. And like you, I'm just trying to find anything I can to lift and get a decent workout out. Um, we've never actually sat down like this and talked. And a lot of times at Dynamite, during catering for lunch or dinner, I like to sit with guys and girls that I've never sat down and talked to, and I like to hear their stories. So I haven't heard your story because we've never done this. So I would love to know how and when you discovered this magical world of professional wrestling.
Well, a lot of people have that moment when they discovered pro wrestling. They are like, oh, I was flipping through the channels and I said, what's this? Or whatever it is. I actually don't have that moment because I've been a wrestling fan for so long that I don't remember why or how I started watching. I mean, it had to be one of the first things I ever watched on TV. I just, wrestling's always been there. So I think it was something I always wanted to do from the time I was a little kid, even before I even really knew what it was. I knew I wanted to do it. And then when I got to be a little bit older, but still single digits, Bret Hart was the guy that really just translated with me. I loved the fact that he was cool. He had the leather jacket. He had the sunglasses. He wasn't as big as the other guys. I really took a liking to him in his like Intercontinental title days, and I just really followed him. And I was like obsessed with him almost to a certain extent. He was like my hero. And the funny thing is, when I was about 16 years old and I was in high school, I was watching wrestling on TV, and before the main event, they would always show like a teaser for what was going to be on the news that night, on the local news. And this time, the ad was the EWF heavyweight champion, the future Frankie Kazarian, up next on the Channel 13 news or whatever it was. And I was like, what? What is this? Because I didn't know about the indies in California. I read Pro Wrestling Illustrated and that sort of thing, so I knew the indies existed, but I didn't know there were any in California. So I watched the news that night. It was advertising a wrestling company and a wrestling school that happened to be about 45 minutes from where I live, and Frankie Kazarian was the champion of the company. So the next day, my mom called and found out all the information. And that Saturday, I had my first wrestling training class. So here we are, 17, 18 years later, and Frankie's my partner. So that's kind of a funny little story.
That's actually really cool. So you watched wrestling for a long time, and then you see Frankie Kazarian on TV. You learn about a whole new world of professional wrestling, which is the independent world, which you wouldn't see obviously from watching what Brett was doing on TV. So now you have everybody you're watching in Brett's league, and then Frankie Kazarian and all these new guys that you're exposed to. When did you say, I love watching this, I'm a huge fan, but I want to do more, I want to become a wrestler?
Like I said, I think it's something I always wanted to do. I can't remember ever wanting to do anything else. And a lot of kids, they were like, oh, I want to be a fireman. I want to be a policeman. I want to be a superhero. And I was always, oh, I want to be a pro wrestler. And I would wrestle with my friends when I was a kid. And I was always a little bit too rough and would end up hurting someone, unfortunately. So I get in trouble a lot. And I got hurt a couple of times. I was wrestling my brother. I broke my arm once. And, all of this was just kind of secretive behind my mom. I did the whole backyard wrestling thing at one point. And it's just always been my dream. And it was really tough, though, when I got into the wrestling business. It was at a time that I like to call now, that I call it the Great Depression of wrestling, because this was, this was years after ECW had closed, WCW had closed, and basically everything was closing up shop. And there were no opportunities in WWE. Everything you heard about them was if you weren't 6'4", 260, then they weren't even looking at you. And then going forward past that, it was, oh, we don't even want professional wrestlers, we want pro athletes. So at a time, it looked like the best thing to do to get into the wrestling business was to not be a wrestler. And so it was just, I felt like for a while I was doomed to be on the indies, and you have goals of, you have to make other goals of like Japan or going overseas somewhere. But it was actually always hard for me because later on, as I got a little bit older, my mom was dealing with a lot of medical issues. She had different illnesses and that sort of thing. So I was kind of helping take care of her. So I was working a day job. So that limited, I was able to travel sometimes, but if she was like really bad, then I would have to, maybe turn some things down. And then obviously the day job took away from that as well. I get calls, hey, can you come to Australia for 2 weeks? Tomorrow. And it's like, no, I can't do that because I have a job. And so one thing always held me back from the other was like taking time off of wrestling would hold me back from my job. And then taking time off or taking time or not taking time off to do the job and would hold me back from wrestling opportunities. So it was a tough balance and a lot of lack of opportunities. People ask me all the time, like, how have you been in the business for so long and now you're just finally with a big company? It's like, these are the things, man. It was, I'm 5'10", barely at 200 pounds now. And, 10, 15 years ago, a guy my size, they wouldn't even look at us. I was an extra many times for WWE, and I was never given a dark match or even a squash match or anything like that. It was the Great Depression.
You pulled through that. How did you say, okay, I'm not going to give up? I mean, were there thoughts of giving up because you just thought it was hopeless and there was nowhere to go?
Yes, I thought about quitting a lot. And I think I would have quit had I had a backup plan. If I had been good at anything else, I probably would have found something else to do. But every time I would think okay, well, what else could I do? Like, what do I want to do with my life if I'm not going to be a professional wrestler? Like, could I do this or that and the other? And I really just couldn't picture myself doing anything else. And I, thank goodness for that, because I probably, if there was an out, I would have taken it. There's that old saying that's, don't have a plan B because it distracts you from your plan A. And I think for me, it may not be like that for everyone, but for me, that definitely was a motivating factor. The idea of just, well, I have no other options. I don't know what else I could do that would make me happy. And this is the only thing I've ever wanted. And the closest I ever got to quitting was right before I started making it, though. I was kind of settling into my day job and enjoying it. And I had worked there for several years on the side of wrestling. And I started kind of getting comfortable with the idea of like, well, wrestling, I guess, is not for me. I'm just doing it for fun at this point. I'm not really making any money. And, this job, if I end up spending the rest of my life with this company, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And so I thought to myself, okay, I'll wrestle another couple months, maybe in one more year, and then I'll quit. And then I went to work one day, and all of a sudden they just told me, like, you don't have it. We were eliminating your position. Like, after all these years, we're letting you go. And I was like, whoa, this is a huge shock to me. I had no idea it was coming. There was no signs that I was doing a good job. My numbers were good. Everything was great. I just, they just got rid of me. So I went home and I thought about it. Actually, the first thing I did was I went to my mom's gravesite because I didn't know what else to do. So I just kind of sat there and I was just talking to myself, talking to her, talking to God. I don't really know. And just saying, okay, so what's next? What do I do? And by the next morning, I got calls from my coworkers, and a lot of them were all telling me, they're like, hey, this place was holding you back. You need to like go and live your dreams. You need to go after it. And they were right. So I decided I'm going to take one more shot at pro wrestling. I said, this is it. I'm going to give it one more shot, but I'm going to give it 100%, everything that I have. And I always say it felt like it was 2 outs and 2 strikes, and I was stepping up to the bat. And fortunately, I worked really, really hard over the next year, 2 years. Doors started opening for me. I ended up getting a position with Ring of Honor, which led to a position with AEW. So everything worked out ultimately.
It's amazing. That's an amazing story. And the idea that you were basically ready to settle, and instead of settling, I know other people told you to go for it, but there was still something else telling you to keep going for it, and you did, and it paid off. And now here you are in AEW, which is, I mean, it's the greatest place to work. We could say that all day long. It's true though. It's a huge platform to perform on, and you're with some of the greatest wrestlers in the world. Sorry, just got a message, and you're getting to perform in front of thousands of people live in good days, and millions of people watching around the world, and you're living out this dream. What's going through your mind when you're standing in the back of that tunnel before you pop out on Dynamite? What are you thinking about every time you go out to the ring?
It's crazy. I feel almost everybody in my generation and after me all dreamt of being in the WWE. And that was like the ultimate goal. But, people may not believe me when I say this, but it was never the ultimate goal for me. When I was a kid, I just dreamed of being a professional wrestler in a big arena, in a big stage, because I watched everything. When I was a kid, I watched WWE, I watched WCW, I watched the lower companies like that, what I can get on TV, whether it be like WCCW or whatever it is. And I always say this, when I was dreaming of being a professional wrestler, there were no logos. There was no company that I dreamt of. It was just me in a ring and a big crowd. And so when I'm backstage at WWE or WWE at AEW, and I'm looking around and the way things feel and the type of company it's in, like I can honestly say, like, this is the exact thing I dreamt of when I was a kid. Like I'm living what I dreamt of, and it's insane. And it still doesn't feel real. Sometimes I'm pinching myself because it's just like, okay, when am I going to wake up? Because it's like I wanted this for so long, and it didn't happen for so long, or equally as long. And and then eventually it just happened, and it happened so quickly in a way. So I can't say enough good things about AEW. You know, is it perfect? No, nothing is perfect, but it for me, it's a dream come true. It's a great environment. I think we have a lot of room to grow because we're still in under a year of television, and we're just over a year in existence. So we've got a lot of room to grow. And I look at it for guys and girls that are in their mid to early 20s that we have on our roster, and they're so fortunate that they've got this opportunity at such a young age, you know, like the Chris Statlanders and the Darby Allens and Jungle Boys, because they're going to be able to be the people that will grow in the company. Yeah, I'm, you know, in my 30s, so I'm not like going to be able to, like, I'm not going to be in the company for 15, 20 years like they have the opportunity to, but it's going to be cool for them to see where it's going to go. But they're at the same time, they're here planting the seeds that are going to grow, and they'll be able to see them grow 10, 15 years from now. So that's really cool.
Awesome. And you're absolutely right. We have a couple of questions from fans. We got a lot of questions, and these were a couple of the popular ones that many people were asking. Where did your name come from?
So when I started training, it was my friend Chris and I. We started together. This is actually a different school than the first one I went to, but I think my coach just gave everyone nicknames because he couldn't remember names. Like, I get it now. And he called my friend Chris Dynamite, and he called me Scorpio because at the time I had a hair that was similar to Too Cold Scorpio. Like, I had like the ponytail and that sort of thing. And so he just called me Scorpio, and he called Chris Dynamite. And eventually got to the time where I needed to wrestle. I needed to make a debut, and I needed a name, and we couldn't think of anything. And we thought and we thought and we thought. And then the day of, it was just like, okay, why don't we just call you Scorpio, Scorpio Sky, and we'll change it later. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds good. You know, but I didn't really care for it that much. But I was like, okay, this is cool just to get through, you know, the first couple weeks or months or whatever it is, and then we'll figure something else out later. And you know, here we are years later. We never changed it. So
Did you do the dance too in your first match?
and I can't do the moves like
Another fan.
mask. I started with a mask on because at one point, so my name is Sky Andrews. There was a point where we were going to say Scorpio Sky Andrews, but we were like, oh well, we shouldn't have like a full name if you were, you know, if you wear a mask. So we just went with Scorpio Sky.
I like it. Another fan question. What is the worst town you've ever been in?
Anything outside of Southern California is tied for worst.
Scorpio, you have an awesome story. You are doing extremely well for yourself. Is there anything that you've learned in these this short amount of time? You're not that old. Is there anything that you've learned that you'd like to take as a lesson and share with the world?
Man, I've learned a lot. I would say the first thing is to not put a limit. Don't put a time limit on your dreams. And what I mean by that is very early in my career, maybe my first or second year, I met X-Pac, Sean Waltman, who was awesome. And he was backstage. I worked a show with him. He was backstage, and he was kind of, you know, everyone kind of grouped around him. We were listening to him talk. And he had asked me, like, how long have you been in the business? And I was just like, you know, whatever it was, a year and a half, 2 years, you know, Mr. Waltman, I'm a big fan of yours, you know, like that sort of thing. And he was like, oh, you've got years to go. Like, you've got, you know, 10 years at least before you make it. And I was like, oh, wow, okay. And he said, don't ever set a limit. He said, don't say, if I don't make it by this time, then I'm going to give up. And that always resonated with me. And I have friends that actually did say that, like, oh, if I don't make it by 30, or if I don't make it by this day, I'm going to move on and do something else. And I think had he not told me that, maybe I would have done the same thing. So the fact that, you know, that was told to me very early is also advice that I would pass on. And it doesn't just go for pro wrestling. I think that's for anything you want to do. Don't set a limit. on your dream or on your goal. Don't say, if I don't do it by this date or if I don't do it by this time. Sometimes, this is another analogy I always use. Like, not everyone can be the number one draft pick. Like LeBron James, it was the number one draft pick and he had a legendary career and still does. But Kobe Bryant was picked number 13. He had an equally legendary career. You have guys that were chosen. Draymond Green is multiple time champion, and he was like the 45th pick. And so what I mean is, sometimes people are going to get in and they're going to make it right away. There are going to be guys that are guys and girls. They're going to be 1, 2, 3 years into their career of whatever they're doing, and they're going to hit big. And then there's going to be people that are going to take 5, 10, 15 years. But that doesn't mean that you can't have just as legendary of a run as the others. So just don't set a limit on yourself. As long as you have no limits on yourself, then there's nothing that's going to hold you back, because ultimately the only thing that's going to hold you back is yourself.
I remember being either a junior or senior in college, and I had kept sending videotapes out and resumes out to both companies, and I just wasn't getting anywhere. And there's a part of me at I started when I was 16, but still at 20, 21-ish, I'm like, oh, I'm not going anywhere. I might just have to give this up because I'm never going to get there. So I totally can relate to that. If you don't put the timestamp on it, you just keep trying and keep putting yourself out there, you never know what's going to happen, and it pays off. So if you want something, go for it, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Scorpio, it's great to see you. I miss seeing you on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and thank you so much for joining today, and I appreciate it. You are a pal and a confidant. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I am very excited to bring out my next guest. We have worked together for a long time, and we have reunited in AEW. I love her. She is our seamstress. She is incredible. She is a wonderful person. She helps me pick out, I'm colorblind, so I always send her pictures of my suits and shirts and ties and go, hey, does this work? And which one do you like best? Sandra, thank you so much for joining us on the first episode here. It's great to see you. I really miss you. What have you been up to?
Hi, I miss you too. Oh my God. I've been really busy. Working on these masks has been like crazy lately. This times that we're in right now. Just basically a lot of masks. I just finished making this really cool one. It's a Avengers one for my grandson. That's 8 years old. So doing that,
You're making masks while you're not making gear for everybody. What are the masks for?
The masks are for the virus right now, the COVID-19, the horrible situation, and I'm trying to supply as many as I can to local hospital and doctors' offices and just anyone who's like in need right now. So I've always had a lot of fabric on hand, and I've just been putting it to great use.
That is so cool, and I love that. I love everything about you. You are like my favorite person. And
thank you so much. That's
it's
awesome.
so funny that you fit into this world of wrestling. You are loved and admired by everybody in wrestling. Anybody who knows you loves you. How did you get started in pro wrestling?
Gosh, it was so much by accident, and probably around 1994, I did an outfit for Johnny B. Bad, Mark Merrow. And they found me. Actually, his girlfriend at the time, Sable, found me through a local fabric store and said that she needed someone to make an outfit for her boyfriend. So I'm like, okay, but what is it that you need? So when she told me, I didn't know anything about wrestling or anything. It was in the middle of prom season. I was busy working on that. So I told her I didn't have any experience. And she said, well, just could you give us a try, because we're really in a bind right now. So long story short, I took a chance and I just made these pair of trunks for him, not knowing anything about spandex at the time. And he wore it to a pay-per-view, and it was a stressful job because I wasn't sure what I was doing. But when the match was over, he took a few seconds to call me and to thank me for my work. And from that point on, my phone just started. I guess what he said, well, I guess I did a good job because people started calling me to do wrestling gear. And pretty soon the prom dresses stopped and I started doing wrestling gear. But that was not an intent. I had no plans. It just kind of found me, honestly.
So you started with Johnny B. Bad, and then
Yes.
how long were you at WCW for?
Oh gosh, I was there probably I did work out of my home for so many years. I actually worked, had a workroom pretty much like what I have right now. I'll scan around real quick and what I have right now. But probably it's probably with the company maybe about 4 or 5 years. But I worked at home for many years before I actually was, on the road traveling with the company.
Wow. So how many years have you been making gear for the wrestlers that everybody has watched for all these years? They probably don't realize that you are behind a lot of the gear that they've seen for so many years. How many years has it been?
I would say my gears go back at least, it was probably 94, 95 when I really got started into it. 95 when it was really, hey, when I was really popping, okay? And I have some pretty iconic ones through the time that I had no idea at the time they were going to be iconic, but we just do what we do. I had no idea.
We do what we do. And speaking of which, when you're at AEW, you do everything because I see you making gear while you're there. I see
Yes.
if a button pops off something, you'll fix somebody's button. You're ironing the blazers for the announcers. You're doing what? Tell us what it is you do, or maybe just tell us what you don't do. That might be easier.
Well, I don't wrestle, but
Yet,
maybe because I haven't had the opportunity. I'm not
right?
saying I can't, I just haven't. But to me, as far as like the wardrobe department, I try to do every single thing that I can for everybody that I can. If that's ironing a shirt, helping you pick out a tie, or making gear at the very last minute, or sewing on a button, or fixing someone else's boo-boo or my boo-boo, whatever it takes, I try to do it all and try to cover everything I can in that department.
You're
Like a
amazing.
one-woman team. Yeah, I try my best.
You are amazing. Watching you
Thank
every
you.
week, you are amazing what you do in just a few, I mean, I was going to say a few hours, but really there's been times where I ran to you right before we went live for something. I said, and just brought it to you and you fixed it instantly in seconds, ran out, did live TV, and you do that all the time for everybody. It's really good to see you. I miss seeing you on Wednesdays, and it's so cool that you're using your free time right now to
Yeah.
make the masks and donate masks.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I love
Thank
seeing you. I miss you. I'm glad the world gets to meet you now, and we'll look
Thank
forward
you.
to all of your great work.
Thank you so much. I'm so looking forward to putting out the best I can for everybody.
Thank you, Sandra. And thank you for being a friend.
Oh, always, always from my heart. Love you.
Love you too. Take care.
Oh, you too. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank Scorpio Sky for being my very first guest and Sandra for being my first/second, maybe 1A guest. I don't know how that works, but thank you all for watching. And if you'd like to share any feedback or any questions or anything you would like to see in the future, go ahead and send me a tweet and find me on social media. And I'll look forward to doing this again. Please stay in, stay safe, and keep watching everything AEW.